Hi, this is Vic Mignogna, voice of Edward Elric in Full Metal Alchemist. Captain Kirk in Star Trek continues. And do you know what the best podcast is? I'm going to tell you. Five-ish Fangirls, yeah!
The tangents this week continue all the way to episode number 69 of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And we got a very, very special episode for you this week. So set those phasers on stun because we're beaming up to Starbase Indy. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. So glad you could join us. Let's start off like we do every week by going on the virtual table and see who's joined us this week.
This is Brittany in Belvedere.
This is Holly from Wisconsin.
This is Mitch in Kitchener, Ontario.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, everyone. We're somewhat-ish this week. We're once again Chrissy-less, but that is okay. She says hello, and hopefully she'll join us next week. We'll see. So, like I said, we have a different show this week. We're going to forego the news. Not that there's really a whole lot of news this week anyway, so you probably won't miss it. So we're going to jump straight into this week's topic. And this week we have a very special guest. Someone that I met via the internet. We actually haven't met in person, but we've been chatting over the internet. We actually have some a mutual friend in common, but we'll get to that in a second. But welcome to this week's show, Melissa. And I know I asked you how to pronounce your last name, but I'm probably still going to butcher it. So, Kocias? You're close? Or at least tell me that's close.
It is Kocias.
Kocias.
And it runs with supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Which Mary Poppins is my favorite movie, but always a tongue twister, even after all these years. So thankfully we could just go by your first name here for the show. So Melissa, let's start off by introducing yourself and who exactly you are.
Well, I am by trade a conference and event planner. I mostly do registration and abstract stuff for academic conferences, but then in my free time, I run nerd conventions. I've been involved with several, and the one that is coming up later this month is Starbase Indy, which is a local Star Trek convention that meets every Thanksgiving weekend in Indianapolis.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And I, being Indiana born and raised, I'll be honest here, I've heard of Starbase Indy. I've seen it advertised places. I've never attended. Mostly because I've always worked retail, which meant Thanksgiving weekend always meant work. Because Black Friday,
that is one of the challenges.
Always work Black Friday weekend. So I've never been able to attend. Maybe this year, we'll see. I'm no longer working retail, which is good, but I don't know what my plans are for Thanksgiving this year. But we'll get to that. So I actually found you through I want to say it was the Indie PopCon Facebook page. Is that right? Somebody had posted, podcasters, bloggers looking for someone to interview, talk to someone about Starbase Indy because our convention's coming up. I know it was somewhere on Facebook is where I discovered.
It very well could have been because we try to collaborate with all of the other local conventions, and actually there's a lot of staff crossover between Starbase Indy and PopCon and In Conjunction, which is another science fiction and fantasy convention that meets earlier in the year on 4th of July weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And I spoke with one of you one time at the Who North America open house.
That would be me.
Hey.
More than, I'd be kind of weird to say more than likely, considering I'm the only one in the area that could actually get to North America. So most definitely it was me, unless I was cloned by a Zygon and had no idea.
Which is also possible.
Which is always a possible, especially if you watch the last 2 episodes of Doctor Who. So yeah, we may have talked and not even realized who the other was. And as I was saying at the beginning, that we actually have a mutual friend in common, and that is Janie at Who North America. So your name actually came up last weekend. I had lunch with her, and we were talking about plans for Who North America and all that. And I was telling her what we were trying to get someone from Starbase Indy onto the show, and she mentioned your name. I'm like, yeah, Melissa, that's exactly who I've been talking to. She's like, I know Melissa. I'm like, I kind of do too. So your ears may have been burning last weekend. That was because Janie and I were talking about you.
I know what that was. I thought it was just tinnitus.
So for the people that don't know, why don't you tell us about Starbase Indy and the history of the convention and all that?
Sure. Well, Starbase Indy has been around in one form or another for quite some time. Since 1988, it met at what was then the Adams Mark Hotel by the airport, which is now the Wyndham, and it went in one incarnation for a while, and then it changed hands a couple of times, and in its current iteration, it has been run by the same group of people since 2004, and then this year we are also having a little bit of changeover. I have stepped up as the con chair, taking over for Kim Huff, who has been the con chair the past 10 years. And she's not going away by any means, but she's felt it's time to maybe step back a little bit and focus her energies elsewhere. And so the other nifty thing about this year is that we are back at the Wyndham, which is where we started. And so we have a little bit of an unofficial homecoming theme this year. And our t-shirt and badge art is reflecting that. Our resident artist has come up with a design that kind of incorporated some of the themes from Star Trek for the voyage home. Darby Wales here. And one of the things that makes Starbase Indy kind of unique and just a really fun convention for people to just return to year after year is that it's not only smaller than some of these really just giant conventions, but it's also a bit more intimate in that people get more of a personal interaction with some of the guest stars that we have. We have a lot of programming that is for all ages. We have some programming that is aimed just at kids, some that's aimed more at the older set. We have just a variety of panels, anything from making your own tribbles to different aspects of science fiction writing, and we've had movie prop makers come. We've had makeup artists come who worked on Star Trek, and so they would make up somebody right on stage. We've had some years where we had some Klingons. We had some years where we had some Ferengi. And then another thing that is also really fun is the past few years we have hosted Indianapolis's very own 5-year mission, which is a Star Trek rock band whose mission, that is now more than 5 years long, is to write and record a song for every episode of the original Star Trek. So this year they will be participating in a battle of the bands with another Indianapolis-based Star Wars rock band, the Yavin 4.
Nice. Yeah, I see Starbase Indy around at other conventions. They get around quite a bit. What I found interesting with Starbase Indy, like I said, I've never attended, but I've seen it advertised, and based on the name and based on, I know, guests that you've had in the past, I mean, it is a Star Trek convention, but what I find interesting is, especially this year, is you've got a couple of guests that have ties, well, ties to other fandoms, especially one that's very near and dear to our heart. You have a couple of guests that are actually on ABC's Once Upon a Time. So I would think that, even if you're not necessarily a Star Trek fan, that if you're a fan of science fiction, or if one of the guests has been in something else that you're a fan of, that you will still get something out of the convention.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. When we look for guests to attend, of course we do want to get people with Star Trek ties, but as you may have noticed, a lot of these actors have been on several different shows, or we've lately been trying to find people who have been on some of the newer science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction type shows to draw in a broader audience and get more interest in the convention, and just because it's kind of fun. And also there are still just a finite number of Star Trek actors, so eventually after 20 years you might cycle through many of them.
Yeah.
But what we also try to do is, because we know a lot of the people who attend our convention are fans of not just Star Trek, we want to appeal to their other interests as well. And then the other thing that we also like to look for specifically when we are inviting actors to be our guest stars is that we want people who will also enjoy the friendly, interactive atmosphere that we have. So their tables will be in a public space, and it's not necessarily like the Wizarding World or the big Comic-Con ones where you have to line up and stand there for hours and maybe get a 30-second interaction.
Mm.
They'll be able to go up and chat with people. And there are also a couple of other opportunities to have meet and greets, including our annual Dinner with the Stars, which is something that I think is pretty unique that we have among this genre of convention. And it's an additional ticketed event that has a sit-down dinner and then entertainment by the guest stars, because we often find that the actors and other guests who come will have some kind of shtick, or they'll even have some other talent or thing that they like to do, and they can get up on stage and show that off to everyone. We've had some who have done a whole, like a jazz show. They kind of like their own version of the Rat Pack. We've had some who have gotten up and done comedy, and plus we split them up among the different tables, so everybody who is seated at one of the tables at this dinner is getting to sit with one of our guests, and they get to have, for the first act, also on a more personal level. So it's an awful lot of fun.
It sounds like it. That's very cool. I've got the website pulled up here, and I'm kind of looking, and of course you have your things you would expect at conventions, like your photo ops with the celebrities. Looks like you're gonna have karaoke.
Yes, that is an annual tradition that goes on, and because we also want to have programming for all ages that goes the entire length of the day, and you might have to wait pretty long in line to actually get up and sing your song. The karaoke is one of the really popular events, and it is often scheduled till about 2 in the morning, and it usually goes all the way up until then.
Wow.
We also have a masquerade, which is another thing that happens at most other conventions, and we have a panel of judges, and we do give out prizes, and we've got a kids division and an adult division. Sometimes with some sort of halftime entertainment. One year we had two gentlemen dress up as Kirk and Khan, and they walked around with little ships that were you know how when you were in preschool you would make those cars out of cardboard boxes and wear them over your shoulder with a strap. They're kind of like that, only with the two starships, and they reenacted the battle scene.
Nice. Nice. That's exciting, though. I love it.
So, and then some of the oh goodness, I can't talk today. Some of the programming that we have, as I said, includes panels and includes things like make your own tribble. We've had those for the kids for a number of years, but we also let the adults in on it. Last year we even had a tribble pageant, which I will admit started kind of as a joke, and then it sort of snowballed, and then suddenly it was tribbles and tiaras.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, well, the mental images. Oh. Yeah, I'm seeing you've got the initial schedule up on the website. So I'm taking a glance at it here at some of the panels and the things that you have initially scheduled. I'm sure probably your schedule will go through other iterations between now and the convention itself, as things are want to change. But some things that I recognize that I've seen at other conventions, a cosplay panel with a couple of cosplayers at Mog Shell. Actually, I've seen it at a couple of conventions. There's a Game of Thrones panel. There's a Star Wars fan speculation panel. That should be interesting.
Very timely this year.
Yes. Looks like occasional screening. Looks like you're showing Guardians of the Galaxy at least a couple times over the weekend.
Yes, it's all of the screenings will actually officially just be on one day on Saturday, because that was the one day we were able to get it for. So the first screening starts after midnight, and then the second screening will take place at a more reasonable hour.
Smart thinking, though. Smart thinking. So.
We try to have one mainstream big movie to show like that every year.
And it looks like you also have gaming.
Yes.
And that's going to be open 24 hours all weekend.
Indeed. And so we will have people actually, and you know how I was just saying earlier about how there's a lot of crossover on staff and participants between some of the local conventions. The same thing is actually going for our gaming room this year. It is being sponsored by In Conjunction, and some of the members of that convention are going to be running a games library, and some of them will be actually running some games for people to play, some structured games. And yeah, again, it's open 24 hours because who knows when somebody's going to want to play a game.
Very true. And I know some gamers, they are night owls.
Indeed.
They get they're wide awake and at their peak at 3 a.m. So, oh, very, very cool. Very cool. So, and we'll come back to the convention itself here, but I also had questions for you specifically, and I know this is one of the things that was kind of on the advertisement that went out on Facebook, because I know you guys want to talk about the convention, and we obviously want to and get the word out there, because the more the merrier. But speaking to someone in your position, I'm curious, and I don't know about the rest of my co-hosts, but I'm sure the thought has probably crossed their mind is, obviously you said you have a background in event planning, but if you can, and this may be a bit difficult via audio, but if you can, try to give us, I've always been curious of what it's like trying to put on an event like this. I imagine that it's just, somebody comes up with the idea. I know with Indy PopCon, it was, it's only a couple years old, but it started with this kernel of an idea for a convention with this sort of, pop culture theme, and they managed to put it together, and it's become an amazing convention, even only being 2 years old. But I've always been curious of what it's like putting together an event like this. Maybe not necessarily from scratch, but obviously you're working really hard to get this convention and get everything finalized because it's coming up in a couple of weeks. But at the same time, are you already thinking about next year?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things about planning these types of events, is that the planning goes on year-round. Because if you haven't signed a multi-year contract with a venue, for example, you have to start that as far in advance as possible. You send out like a call for proposals so that you can get different venues to give you, their offers to try to get you to come. And you want to figure out what's best for your attendees. For example, when we were doing our most recent search, one of the offers came from one of the downtown convention hotels, and it was a really great offer, but they weren't able to give us free parking, which, if you've ever tried parking in downtown Indianapolis,
Yeah.
it can really cut into your budget. And even with a discount, I knew, and all of the other folks who were involved in the hotel search, that would be a deal breaker for a lot of our attendees, because this is one of the things that has been very appealing about Starbase Indy, is that it's local, and it's always been at a place that has had free parking. It's easily accessible. You're not having to worry about crazy parking garages and $20 a day and things like that.
Mm.
The heart and soul of a convention like this as well is the volunteers. And that's one of the things that sometimes I wonder whether just the people who just come every year don't necessarily notice. And part of that is it falls under well, if you're doing a good job, then nobody really notices you. On the other hand, these are all people who have full-time jobs, go to school, have families, have whole lives outside of this,
Mm-hmm.
and they're donating their time and effort to do this. So I know I'm always so appreciative of my volunteers, even if they say, well, I can only do this little bit. Every little bit is appreciated. So you have different departments that you have to split people into. we kind of try to attach Star Trek kind of names to our departments. We have engineering, who is involved with the physical setup and teardown. We have an actual stage with a bridge set, sort of the classic Enterprise bridge, and a captain's chair, and some computer screens that will flash different images and things. We have the ops department, the operations, who are kind of responsible for sort of the daily operations, just kind of keeping things humming. And then, of course, we have registration, which, of course, in addition to being near and dear to my heart, since that's what 90% of my real-life job is involved with, I always think it's one of the most important things, just because it's the first time that people are interacting. That's their first experience with your event, either from registering online or when they walk up and see your smiling face and you give them their packet. And every year there's always somebody who will say to me, "This is my first Star Trek convention. I've never been to one, but I saw a flyer and I thought it would be fun." That just makes me so happy, because I love for people to have fun, and I love seeing them get to experience it for the first time. I know I kind of got off track there.
Yeah, that's fine.
But again, so I guess as far as like the layout of the year for us, the January is kind of the regrouping phase. Some years we will sort of take December off, if you will, but other years we'll have sort of a follow-up staff meeting at some point a couple weeks after the convention, but well before the holidays. And then earlier in the new year, we start looking for ideas for guests that we might want to bring, because that's another thing. You also want, if you are looking at somebody who might be really popular,
Mm-hmm.
you want to first see if they're available, because other conventions are also competing for them. And also, sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge finding somebody who is willing to work on a holiday weekend, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where we kind of start early in the year. We encourage the departments to sort of start putting out feelers for volunteers and such. And then as we get closer to the summer, that's when we start getting more into swing with getting the programming laid out. People have made suggestions. We start putting together sort of a skeleton grid. We take some of the big events and use them as sort of the landmarks, or the fixed point in time, if you wanted to use a Doctor Who parlance. The big events, like, all right, well, we know the Dinner with the Stars has to be this time, and we know that 5-Year Mission concert has to take place somewhere around here, and the Masquerade has to take place somewhere around here.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the little things start to fill in the holes around that. Again, as we get later in the year, we then have to start thinking about things like artwork for the badges, for the program book, for the T-shirts. And Starbase Indy tries to have some kind of really fun, creative design each year. And for people who pre-register, they actually get kind of fancy badges. We will actually pre-print and laminate their badges for them. And then walk-up badges will still have the design on it, but people will fill in their own name, and we'll give them a plastic badge holder and send them on their way with that. Then when you get up into the final weeks before, then you get into more of the hardcore work of, all right, well, now we got to print all these badges and stuff all these packets, and then make checklists to make sure that all the departments have the things that they need, and then have all of the staffing that they need, so that we're not the Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, going, oh no, we need a box truck to move this 800 pounds of stuff. So it's one of those things that's a lot of fun and also a lot of work, but I just live for it. So
I imagine so. I've always wondered. I'm sure there's people out there. It's like, oh, I have this idea for a convention, and they probably have no idea where to start or what all. I'm sure they have some idea in their mind that it probably is very involved if you want to, have something that's similar to, other conventions out there. Even on the smaller scale, there's still a lot involved.
Yeah, and I would say the venue is probably the most important thing, because you have to figure out where your budget's coming from. You are signing documents. You want to make sure that you don't get a bad deal.
Mm-hmm.
And the one piece of advice that I would give to anyone who ever wants to have any kind of an event that takes place at a hotel is to read up on attrition clauses, because that is, in a nutshell, when you sign a document that says you are blocking this many rooms, you are guaranteeing that your attendees will buy up and pay for that many room nights for that hotel. And if you have a really nasty attrition clause, what happens is that if you don't fill that room block, you are financially responsible for paying for all of those room nights that the hotel could have sold to somebody else. So there have been other conventions that I have heard of this happening where they almost went under, or they did go under because they were a first or a second year event, and they just didn't really truly understand, like, oh, well, hey, if we get this big room block, then maybe we'll get a discount on our programming space, but then wound up being responsible for like $30,000 worth of rooms. So,
and that would not have been something that would have occurred to me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, because when you go to a convention, there's just so many fun, cool things, and it just kind of magically happens. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and I definitely don't want to sound as if I'm scaring people off from doing that, because I definitely am not. But it is really interesting once you get involved with putting on how much more there really is that goes on just beneath the surface. So, but that being said, I always would encourage anybody who wanted to get involved with an event to totally go and volunteer for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way, in many conventions, you can get some kind of a discounted admission for putting in work. Every convention has a different rate. There's some that, I think like WorldCon, where you buy your badge, and then if the convention makes money, then the volunteers can get some or more of their fees refunded. Starbase Indy has a special staff rate that is a significantly discounted rate, so that anybody who puts in a certain number of hours is eligible to pay that rate. And we don't expect people to spend the entire convention working. We try to, in fact, work around the events that our volunteers do want to actually go participate in. If they really want to see this one actor's Q&A, or if they really, really wanted to go to the Battle of the Bands, that department head will make sure to try to schedule it so that that person can have the best of both worlds. They can be involved with the convention, and they can participate and have a lot of fun at it.
Yep, that's what I understand. Mitch is actually our resident volunteer expert.
Yeah, I've been volunteering at Fan Expo Canada, which is a local. It's in Toronto. It's every year, Labor Day long weekend, and volunteers for that get in free. So, I've gone to Fan Expo Canada 4 times and only paid once for my admission, and that was the first year I went. After that, I volunteered and got in free.
Oh, fantastic!
And then this year they also bought us all tickets to the Canadian National Exhibition.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, the CNE, which is the thing that goes on every year in August, late August, early September. So they bought 1 day passes for all of us for the Sunday that the convention finished. So
that is really exciting, and I get that also kind of shows the difference between the sizes of some conventions. The big conventions can often offer their volunteers a little bit more in perks than some of the smaller conventions.
Fan Expo Canada is a really big convention. Like, it's not that much smaller than like the big, like New York or San Diego.
Oh, wow. San Diego is what, like 150,000 or something like that?
103. Fan Expo is probably about 100,000 ish. So,
yeah, and by contrast, Starbase Indy averages around 700 to 800.
Wow.
Yeah. So we are definitely smaller, but like I said, I think that's one kind of nice, gives it more of a family feel and not just a family-friendly feel, but you feel as if, I mean, even though, 800 people is actually quite a lot of people if you think about it, but you get a lot of people that you see every year returning, and so it almost becomes like a summer camp. Everybody just, they see each other, and they're so excited, and people have got friends that they only see at Starbase Indy, and I've also done Gen Con since 2006, so I also can appreciate the differences in the size of the convention. And for those of you that don't know, Gen Con, well, it's been growing a lot too, and I think this past year it had close to 60,000 unique visitors, and I think the turnstiles were something around 120,000, which that's just the number of people, if you add the number of people that came through the doors over the course of the whole event, which includes repeating people. So people with the weekend pass would be included they'd be counted multiple times.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think Gen Con is the biggest one of the biggest conventions I've ever attended. It's huge. There's a reason it goes on for 4 days and not 3.
Indeed.
And it's pretty much 24 hours for 4 days. Yeah.
The program book has like 200 pages, and it's printed in something like 6-point font. It's just so ridiculously tiny if you actually flip through the program book to see the list of scheduled events for Gen Con. But it takes up all the programming space in the Indiana Convention Center and in nearly all of the adjacent hotels. It was one of the reasons that the Indiana Convention Center expansion got greenlit when it did.
Yeah.
Because Gen Con said, oh yes, if you double in size, we'll definitely fill. And they did.
Yep, very much so. Yeah, so a convention the size of Starbase Indy, where it's like, 900 people is still a significant number if people consider, like my graduating high school class was like 100 something, maybe 200 at best. So, which I thought that was a lot of people, but compared to something like, Fan Expo Canada or Gen Con, 900 people would feel downright like a family reunion, I would think.
Indeed.
for a lot of people. So, which I think is great. You know, the fact that Starbase Indy has been going on for this long, and you know, you're not huge by any means, but you're obviously strong in the numbers that you do get, because people, like you said, people keep coming back. They're people that came, you know, that come every single year and see, hey, meet up with friends. That they're the ones, you know, that's their annual get together or whatever. So, you know, I think that's great. You know, that. Success doesn't necessarily equate to large numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's something to be said about that, I think. So, and working our way back to the convention itself. So obviously it is the weekend of Thanksgiving. So
it is the Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep.
So you can still have your family get together and stuff yourself on turkey and pie and everything else and watch some football, and then mosey on out the door the next day and come have a Star Trek convention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And tickets are still available?
Yes, tickets are still available at starbaseindy.com, and the weekend rate is $50, and at the door you will also be able to purchase tickets, and in addition, at the door, if you are only able to come for one day, for example, we do have individual day rates.
Okay, that's good. And
so
then
we have a lot of attendees who also work retail, and so sometimes we will see a big spike in the number of people who will come Saturday over Friday.
The turkey coma is finally worn off.
Indeed, and the ones who haven't been required to be at their place of employment at 3 a.m. to face down an angry mob coming after Xboxes or what have you.
I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. Although I worked at a hardware store, so it was more people fighting over shop vacs. But
yeah. So,
and then
we kind of say that you know, don't face the crowds at the mall. You can come and do your geeky Christmas shopping with us, because we also have a dealer's room full of a really great variety of vendors selling all manner of nerdish things.
Cool. Very cool. The dealer's room is my weakness. Especially if there's art, if there's original art. I got a weak spot for Artist Alley.
I have a hallway in my apartment that I've named my wall of nerdery, because that's where I'm putting all of the prints from people that I buy at conventions.
Yeah, that's my entire apartment. It's not just a wall. It's bedroom, living room. It's even getting into the bathrooms.
Well, that was the one spot in the house where it wasn't fighting for wall space with bookshelves and things. Why must we decide?
Yeah, I know. And then also online, I see that you can also prepay for the photo ops.
Yes, you can. Basically, when you buy the photo ops, your registration packet will then include, some kind of little receipt showing that you've paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
We've done it differently in different years. One year we had like a little punch card. Other years we just had like a ticket for each one. There will be specifically scheduled times where the various actors will be doing photo ops, and then those will get printed and they will be available on the Sunday of the convention. So you can pay for them, have your photo taken, and then actually have the photo to take home by the end of the convention.
Which I like that. That's nice. So, very nice, very nice. So well, that's exciting. Like I said, I don't know what my Thanksgiving plans are yet. I don't know if I'll be in town or not, but I may have to try to attend at least one day. So.
And that is specifically why we have the one day, is because we do get a lot of people who are like, I wasn't sure until yesterday that I was going to be able to come, but I'm here.
Hooray! Yeah. Just I thought I was done with conventions for the year, but maybe not.
Just one more.
One more. Well, we'll see what my wallet says as well. So. Oh, except that dealer's room. It's tough. Oh, alrighty. Well, this has been really fun to talk about. Like I said, I've known about Starbase Indy, but I've never attended. And being a Hoosier native, I feel kind of like somebody should take away my Hoosier card or Hoosier nerd card for never attending this particular convention. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Hoosier nerd gods. Don't take my card away from me. But if I can't attend this year, I'll definitely put it on my calendar and try to attend maybe next year, or at some point in the future. Now that it's more on my radar than it was before. So. And if any of my co-hosts ever find themselves in Indiana at the end of November, I can give you a couch to crash on if you can't pay for the hotel room. I live close enough; it wouldn't be that bad. So feel free to come visit. Come see me. You can use my shower and crash on my couch, and you can go to Starbase Indy if you want. So, offers always there. Melissa, thank you so much for taking your time out of I'm sure your very busy schedule, planning schedule, to chat with us about Starbase Indy, and as you're toiling away trying to finalize everything before the convention happens here in a few weeks. Best.
It's been my pleasure.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much, and best of luck to you and the rest of your crew.
Very much.
Your Starbase Indy crew and hopefully you have a very smooth convention without any serious hiccups, and everyone has a great time. And based on the pictures I've seen online, it looks like it's just a blast. With the celebrities and the dinner and the music and the masquerade and all that other fun stuff. So, and everything, the info people need for the convention is all on the website.
It's all there at starbaseindy.com. We also have a Facebook page. Just look on Facebook for Starbase Indy and you will find us.
And you're also on Twitter.
We are on Twitter, yeah. Sometimes it gets a little intermittent because we we forget to tweet, but you'll notice it really ramping up right about now.
Very cool. So go like their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter and catch those intermittent tweets.
At Starbase Indy.
At Starbase Indy. So very cool. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us. And if anyone has questions about the convention, obviously they can contact the powers that be through the website or Facebook or Twitter. You can tweet at them. Somebody's bound to see it eventually, I'm sure. So all questions and registration, photo ops, all available on the website, so it's nice and centralized. And I guess unless Melissa, do you have anything else you want to throw out there? Just if I'm forgetting everything, you know better than I do.
Yeah, no, I think we've pretty much covered everything. So Starbase Indy, Thanksgiving weekend, November 27th through 29th. We hope to see you there at the Wyndham, Indianapolis.
All right, great. So, and we'll go ahead and put a link to the website in the show notes for this show, and put it up on our Facebook page as well, so people can find it there. And then obviously, if anyone wants to contact us, you can find all of our stuff at the 5ish Fangirls podcast.blogspot.com. There you can find links to our Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. We're on a lot of social media. Tumblr. Finally, I've put the link up for our Goodreads page, so you can the Traveling the Vortex Goodreads page, so you can link to that as well. iTunes. Our link to our iTunes is there, so you can subscribe to us on iTunes, rate the show, leave us a review if you are so inclined. Our Patreon page is linked on there as well. Again, we never can say thank you enough to our Patreon supporters. Without you, the show would probably still go on, but not nearly as the plans and the ideas that we have to help the show grow would certainly not be as likely without your support. So thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Everything's on our blog, on our website. So if it's not there, we don't do it. With few social medias we're not on. So. I don't think there's anything else. We did Star Wars with Friends last night. Thanks to everyone who joined in. I unfortunately missed it. I had to go to bed early. But thanks to everyone who joined in for episode 4. So 2 weeks from yesterday, whatever the date is for that, the 21st, I think, of November.
Yes.
We'll be doing Star Wars with Friends again, obviously, episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Many would probably argue one of the, if not the best, of the Star Wars films.
I'll have to agree with that.
Yeah. So, of course, we do that 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll hit play and tweet along with the movie, hashtag Star Wars with Friends, hashtag Empire Strikes Back, whatever hashtag you want to use for that particular film. So we will be doing that. I can't believe we're almost done. We're this close to the new Star Wars movie being released. It's crazy. So that will be coming up in a couple weeks, and I think that's it as far as housekeeping, at least for this week. So with that, Melissa, again, thank you for joining us, and I guess we shall sign off for this week.
This is Regina just saying goodnight.
Fish saying goodnight from Kitchener, Ontario.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Good night, everyone!
Listening to the 5ish Fangirls podcast. Any and all movies, books, games, and other forms of media mentioned are owned and operated by the respective copyright holders. No copyright infringement is intended or implied.